We are back, and the lovely lady next to me is Miss Elsie Harry Ross. Elsie, good afternoon and welcome to CWS As It Is.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Actually, it's Elsie Harry
And what is the
on
Ross
Facebook.
for? Is Harry just Harry?
Yes.
My apologies, Elsie. Can you tell us who you are, just for to orient our listeners to you? Tell us who you are and what do you do, and in one sentence if you can. And if you can't, forgive me.
Okay, well, I'm Elsie Harry, international relations student at the University of Guyana. I'm an artist, spoken word. I'm an activist, and of course, at heart, I am Guyanese.
Activist, artist, and at heart Guyanese. Now, as a Guyanese, what does this period in Guyana mean to you? A new president has been sworn in. What does this mean to you right now?
Well, for me, it means the end of a period that was just kind of gloomy and filled with despair. I think that one of the things that I noticed moving back to Guyana is that the air in Guyana was thick and heavy with a feeling of despair. And when I kind of spoke to people about it, it was a mixture of race hate, poverty, a whole host of other issues that Guyana had been battling with for a very long time. And I think that with this new government, with this new president, we have hope that these things will be changed. We have hope that this is a new day is dawning. I have hope that we have a brighter future ahead of us if we want it, of course.
Race. Everybody seems to be talking about race today. And there seems to be a call for a national conversation on race.
Yeah.
What do you think should be some of the discussions?
Well, at the beginning of the discussion, I think we need to look at where this whole race hate issue stemmed from. And I'm thinking it stemmed from slavery, of course, slavery and indentureship and a colonial past. But also, I think that since race is not something, well, race hate is not something that you're born with, somebody would have had to instill that in you. And I think that a part of that conversation needs to be speaking about parents who are instilling this race hate in their children, and then their children grow up and they instill it in their children. I think it's something that's passed on from generations, and we need to look, if we're going to deal with addressing the issue, we need to look at the source, of course, and find mechanisms to get rid of this kind of unnecessary prejudice against each other because of skin color.
You as a young person, you have parents. What are you prepared to tell your parents, your grandparents, your relatives if you hear that kind of rhetoric coming from them? A rhetoric of racial division, a rhetoric of hate or intolerance. What are you prepared to say or to do?
Well, I'm prepared to tell them that they're hating themselves because fundamentally, when you are Guyanese, you are automatically not necessarily 100% black or 100% Indian or Portuguese or Amerindian. Somewhere along the line, you would have had some type of mixture. Like my great 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 grandmother was mixed with Chinese. My father's mother is Indian and African. So I'm thinking if you're going to hate another person just because they don't look the same way as you and you're going to spout race hate, then you obviously have to be hating yourself. And not only that, you're all Guyanese. So from the time you begin to say that you hate your brother, there is something fundamentally wrong with you. And I'd be this close to disowning them. But I would be very blunt in telling my parents, my grandparents, or whoever that it's not right. They need to stop it, and I absolutely can't support it.
Many are saying that they're expecting a lot from this new government. There's a call for patience because it's a new transition, Lots of things have to take place, have to be put in place, lots of policy changes and so on and so forth. Are you patient?
I am patient, but I'm also vigilant. And I'm also going to keep holding them to the standards that they have set for themselves, actually. Because while I understand that some things may take longer than other things, simple things like the 100 days in office promises, you would have set that timeline for yourself, and I would expect that you would have set realistic timelines. So I'll be working along with the timelines that this new government would have set for themselves and monitoring them to see that, they make good on those promises.
Mm-hmm. In the chat room, Steve asked, what do you as a youth believe the new government should do to those who have used the treasury to get rich while the poverty level was increasing?
Well, I think that they should be prosecuted by the law. I'm very sure that that is illegal, and the only reasonable and fair way to deal with it would be by the rules that govern the society. So, prosecute them according to law.
What were some of the youth your age talking about regarding the campaign? And now that there's been a change in government, what are some of their sentiments?
Well, during the campaign trail, at the beginning at least, I don't feel like a lot of young people were necessarily invested in following the campaign and getting involved in the whole political process. But I think that as it progressed and they saw other young people from the coalition kind of leading the campaign trail for the political parties, I think that they realized that, hey, we have an important role to play. When the list came out, the list of candidates, we noticed that a lot of young people were on the list. And I think that this was a wake-up call for young people that, hey, we're going to be governing ourselves and we should at least have an input in the things that are put on paper to govern us. And now that there's a change in government, I'm not sure that all young people necessarily understand what having a coalition government means. I mean, I know that they're happy that there's a change, but in terms of the dynamic of having a Partnership for National Unity and AFC come together, I'm not sure that they understand the magnitude of this. I mean, this is a vision that is realized from centuries ago that started at the beginning of time with Burnham and Chetty, when they should have stayed together for unity and, well, racial harmony in Guyana. They would have had their issues, and I feel like with David Granger and Moses Nagamutu, this is that vision being fulfilled, and I'm not sure if young people really grasp the magnitude of that.
Do you have any immediate expectations of this new government?
Well, I expect them to immediately come to the University of Guyana, because I feel like the young people are the driving force in any society. And, well, David Granger would have come to the University of Guyana to speak to the students prior to the elections, telling us why we should vote for the coalition. And I think that it would be a step in the right direction to come back to the university and have a discussion on what we require from the government as young people and as university students, and get input from us about how we'd like to see Guyana governed.
The choice between change and progress.
Yes.
What do you mean by choice between the two?
Well, at first, when I thought of that, it was a bit humorous, a bit sarcastic, because I'm thinking both of them are good things.
Right.
Progress is good. How do you choose between change and progress? But then the progress is in parentheses because it is more a notion of perceived progress, or progress for some people and not for others. Because if you examine the situation of Guyana, the PPP was in office for as old as I am. And when I look at the level of progress that Guyana has seen, I'm not particularly impressed by it. So when I saw the PPP's manifesto come out and the promises that they were making for technologically advanced infrastructure in the country, a whole set of things. I'm thinking, what were you doing for 22 years in office? How come none of this ever reached the people of Guyana, the University of Guyana? I'm there, and it's basically falling apart. And I'm thinking, why did you not fix the University of Guyana? Why are you promising to do all these things if you get re-elected when you haven't proven that you deserve our vote in the first instance? So that was why the progress was in parentheses. And then change now. Change is fresh, it's brand new. The APNU AFC do not have a track record as yet because it's now that they're coming into office. So I think that its change is more hopeful than the notion of the perceived progress. So in that sense, we had to choose between a situation that unfamiliar territory that is filled with promise, an old territory that is marked by a perceived notion of progress.
If you had the opportunity to speak with President Granger and Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu, what two questions will you ask each of them?
One of the first questions I think that I would ask them is, how would they go about creating a government of national unity? I know that the coalition is made up of about 7 political parties, and that in itself is some form of unity, but I am I'm partial to the theory of consociationalism. It's more of a theoretical something that we would have learned about in politics class, and it's where the people representing the population in government offices are proportional to the population size of each race. So I'm thinking in theory that sounds good, but I don't know how practical that would be. So my question to them is, how do you go about having a government of national unity in the truest sense that is able to adequately address all of the needs of the 6 races in Guyana without partiality? The second question is, well, I'm partial to young people. What are their plans? Well, I've seen the manifesto, but I have an issue with manifestos in Guyana, and that's a whole other discussion. What are your plans for development in terms of moving the young people from the state that they're in currently, where there's a lot of unemployment, a lot of despair, the suicide rate is ridiculous. The University of Guyana is in a bad state. Like, what is your plan, your action plan for moving the young people from the current state that they're in into a state where other young people in the diaspora from Guyana are envious of the young people currently living in Guyana and want to come home to benefit from the level of progress that they're benefiting from?
Are you willing to commit to developing your country?
I've already committed to developing my country that way.
And what are you personally prepared to do to contribute to this development?
Well, personally, whatever it takes, but on a personal level, things that I have been doing so far is, well, I'm a part of a Guyana Environment Initiative, and I'm sure you have a program with us about that.
Yes, coming up sometime soon.
Yes, so we'll talk about that a little later. But also, I believe in political activism and social activism. So one of the things that I do is I'm very vocal about things that are going on in Guyana, whether it's through my poetry or via Facebook, or if it's just gathering some students at UG and having a discussion about certain things. I believe that if everybody does a little in their own small corners to kind of enlighten people, get the discussion going about what we should expect from our political leaders, from our education system, from whatever government institution is available to us, and what we should expect from ourselves as citizens, then it will make the world of difference. So personally, that is what I've been doing.
What are some changes you would like to see implemented immediately?
Constitutional reform. I'm not sure how immediate that could be, but it's a sore point for me. The issue of the environment, I don't think that we value the environment enough as Guyanese. I mean, Georgetown is a perfect example. So those are some things that I definitely like to see.
You are in communication, and you, I mean, on so many different levels. Do you think that we have an adequate social or national vocabulary to encourage the kind of racial cohesion that we are looking for? Do you think we need to develop such a vocabulary?
Yes, I think we do. I I'm not sure how exactly we go about doing that, but I think there needs to be some process of healing, some process of reconciliation, bringing all the races together for us to develop that mechanism to deal with the issue.
So do you agree with a national conversation on race relations?
Most definitely.
Can you tell, or how can you tell if Guyanese are ready for such a conversation? What are you hearing or privy to among your peers that uh, gives you the sense that Guyanese are ready for that?
Well, uh, I'm not sure if Guyanese are ready for it. Whether we are ready for it or not, it is necessary. So I don't think it's really a matter of whether Guyana is ready for it or not. It needs to happen. It is something that needs to happen if we're going to move forward as a nation. I think it has kept us back in a lot of instances. So I'm not I'm not particularly sure that we are ready for such a conversation, but I know that it is necessary, and for that reason, it should happen.
During the campaign, what was most frustrating? What was most frustrating to you during the campaign as a young person?
I think the the points that the political parties were campaigning based on, that was most frustrating for me. A lot of it was rhetoric from before 1992. A lot of it was rhetoric in terms of, oh, this is what we've done for you, and this is what we're going to do for you, when in reality it's our money. If the government would have built a road, or if the opposition is promising to build a road, it's our money that you have to use to build these things, our tax dollars. So in effect, you're not giving anything to me, I'm paying for this. And I feel like the standard needs to be raised in terms of campaigning. We need to campaign based on issues and not individuals and what they would have done. We shouldn't campaign based on the things that people can give us, or favors or whatever, but we need to campaign based on a strong national plan, a plan of action to improve Guyanese society holistically. I mean, I can't understand. I don't really know what went on during the campaigning process. I didn't learn a whole lot about the vision of certain political parties. And I think that that's something they need to consider. I mean, as a young person, as an academic, and even if I wasn't an academic, there are certain things that I am looking for, like how are you going to improve the situation with poverty? How are you going to improve the education system? I'm not, certain things like that I haven't been hearing along the campaign trail, and that was very frustrating and disappointing to me, as well as the name calling. It was a very petty process, and I'm thinking that our politicians need to be more mature, and they need to put the interests of the people above their own interests, and put their differences aside and just work towards addressing the issues that the people face.
What is one particular cause that is close to your heart, that you're very passionate about?
Political involvement of young people.
I'm sorry,
I
I
feel
didn't get
like
it.
political involvement of young people.
Uh-huh.
I feel like there's a lot of tokenism when it comes to young people and being involved in politics. Like, young people, their faces are put on posters, they're put to sit on platforms, their names are thrown around. to give the illusion that, they're really integrally a part of the political process of forming laws, of forming policy, but I'm not sure that it actually happens. And I want the young people to feel like they have an active role to play in forming policy in Guyana, in governance in Guyana. I mean, I might be a little biased because while I was living in St. Kitts, I had the opportunity to actually go to Parliament as part of the St. Kitts National Youth Parliament Association, and we would have given our input on certain bills like the white paper on education. And I'm thinking that the same should happen in all societies. If this policy is going to affect me in a fundamental way, then at the very least, I should have a say on what goes into that policy. So that is something that is very near and dear to me. And I feel like young people on a whole need to be more invested in the political process, in the lawmaking process, in governance.
And you lived abroad for a bit and returned to Guyana. What was that like for you?
Well, it was bittersweet.
Ah?
It was bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
I always considered myself Guyanese, of course. But when I got back to Guyana, it was a bit of a culture shock for me because Guyana is not what I remembered it to be. Well, I was 6 years old, so I'm not sure if my memories are accurate. But aside from that, I felt like an outsider for the most part. People would look at me and they'd hear the accent and they would say, "Oh, you're not Guyanese." And when I'd want to get involved in certain issues, some people would say, "Why do you even care? You're not even Guyanese." And I would have to convince people that I'm Guyanese. And not only that, some of the parts of Guyana, I wouldn't know where they are. And so I feel like I would have deprived myself of the opportunity to know, well, not me, my parents would have deprived me of the opportunity to know Guyana. But I guess now that I'm here, I have the opportunity to learn the physical area of Guyana as well as different norms and different values, different cultural things that are specific to Guyanese culture.
Are you hopeful for a better Guyana?
Most definitely, and I think that everybody should be hopeful for a new Guyana. One of the great things about electing a new government is you are not accustomed or used to whatever bad habits they might have, and you don't have to get accustomed to that. As soon as you see a government that you've just put into office doing certain things that you, the people, are not pleased with, you use the opportunity to speak about it immediately so that those bad habits or those things that you do not like do not become norms, and then you're living with it for how many ever years, and then they feel like the government or ministers feel like they're no longer servants of the people, but they're masters of the people. So I think that this is a great opportunity for Guyana to hold this new government accountable and to sort of watch them and monitor them for their term in office.
Was there any particular, you mentioned the messaging that you weren't quite impressed with either parties, but was there any particular message that really resonated with you that, sort of inspired you or give you hope?
Well, obviously the message of national unity would have resonated with me. And not only that, but when I listened to David Granger and Moses Nagamudu speak, I felt like there was this sense of love for all people of all races. I mean, I don't know if it happened, but I didn't have any experience where I heard them say any racial comments towards any particular group. And I thought that was excellent because we have had experiences before where people in seeking political office or in political offices would have spouted racial remarks, and I commend them for that. And I think that message of national unity resonated with me above anything else.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned your school, the University of Guyana. What troubles you about the university?
Everything. I mean, it's University of Guyana, we have a lot of potential. The students are incredible. The lecturers are incredible, but the facilities are very poor, and some areas of the management is very poor. So I think that is most troubling about UG, a place that is filled with so much promise, so much potential, where young minds are being molded to govern Guyana, to be active citizens of the world. And well, the past government, they would have had to be, didn't feel it necessary to provide a university with basic necessities. And the private sector, I'm very disappointed with the private sector that they didn't, well, some of the private sector that they didn't see it necessary to give to this university that is responsible for molding all these young minds. So that is very troubling to me that UG does not have basic necessities.
Hmm. If you could have made a list, or what are some issues or points you would have loved to hear from the during the campaign that resonate with you that you didn't hear?
I would have loved to hear a plan for, and everybody will notice I am
A plan for what?
a plan for how they would improve the University of Guyana. Everybody will know by now I'm biased towards UG,
Right.
so I would have loved to hear a comprehensive plan for how do you move the university from the current state that it's in into a state where it will be comparable with international universities. Not only that, there are a lot of disabled students at the University of Guyana, and the university caters for them to an extent, but I would have loved to hear a plan of how you're going to outfit this university to make their experience just as good as any other students at UG. Also, I would have loved to hear a plan for how they were going to deal with the health care issue that we have in Guyana, going to deal with the health care issue that we have in Guyana. The Georgetown Public Hospital is in a terrible state. I mean, when you hear two pregnant mothers are sharing one bed, that is cause for concern. And I didn't hear a comprehensive plan for how you address this healthcare issue in Guyana. So those are two of the things: education and health.
You mentioned the suicide epidemic earlier. Um, how does that? Are you in any way affected by that? I mean, like personally, have you had any personal, know anybody who's had, um, who has committed suicide?
Well, I have the girl. I met her a couple of times. I've seen her around UG. We haven't had any substantial conversations, but she's a familiar face. And I think it was last year while we were on holiday from school, I heard that she had committed suicide, and I couldn't believe it. So that in itself had a personal impact on me. But apart from that, any young person that I hear in Guyana committing suicide, that has a personal impact on me because I understand completely what they're going through. Like I said, when I came back, there was this feeling of despair. So I understand this feeling that you have nowhere to go. For example, you're finished with high school, you go to UG, you end up in a basic job, and that is the end of your life. You get married, you have some children, but there's no real scope for mobility on the highest level. There are some people that feel like their lives will not be anything else. So they hold on to things like relationships with a significant other, and when that doesn't work out, they commit suicide. So for me to be a young person and knowing what these young people are going through to the extent that they feel like they have to take their own lives, that does something to me psychologically. I mean, I have not reached the level of despair where I want to commit suicide personally, but I'm thinking that that could easily be me because I do understand the kind of pressures that these young people face because I face some of them myself.
And one last thing, if you were asked, if you could tell President Granger one thing, or perhaps advise, what would you say?
I would tell him to stay true to the motto. I mean, it is simple and it's easy to say, but I think that inherent in our motto, one people, one nation, one destiny, is so much wisdom that if we work together, we achieve so much rather than if we were divided or if we went our separate ways. So I would just say to President David Grader, stay true to our motto, one people, one nation, one destiny, and you will do a world of good in this office.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Elsie, and I'm looking forward to seeing you with Gomin, or yes, Gomin, in a few weeks' time. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Enjoy your evening as well.
All right, bye bye.